Hi. Today we're going to create a basic development setup for creating Angular 2 applications. What this involves is installing all of the dependent packages, installing typings, which are used along with TypeScript, set up and run the TypeScript compiler, define the module loader settings so it can load our app, and then running a lightweight dev server that we're going to use to um, show the app in the browser. Then we're going to run the actual application, which is going to be this contacts list that you see here. So some of the components that are involved are the Angular framework, TypeScript compiler, Node.js, and the Node package manager. Atom programming editor, though you could use any editor if you want. The Serve lightweight web server, which is based on Node, and Bootstrap, we're just using that for some styling in the app. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy in a package.json file, okay, and a typings.json file, okay. Both of these are going to be used during install. So if you take a look at the package.json file, we'll see that we have a bunch of dependencies, all the Angular packages, Bootstrap, some other packages that are required, System.js, which is the module loader, okay. Um, and then you'll notice there's a post install uh, um, script set up here. So when you do the installation, it's going to try running this after the installation is done. So that's why we needed to have our typings file in here, because it's going to define how the typings are installed. So let's open up a command prompt, and we'll do a node package manager install. That's going to go into this file and download all of those dependencies. Okay. This is going to take a little while, so we'll pause and get back to it as soon as it's done. Okay, so it's done installing, and what you'll notice here is that a node modules directory and a typings directory was created during the install. So node modules has all the dependent software in there. Typings has the types that are used with TypeScript, but that define types for existing JavaScript software. So remember, we're going to be running the TypeScript compiler. It needs to know what the types of the standard libraries are. So that's where that's coming from. So let's take a look at the next file that we have to bring in here, and that's going to be the TypeScript config. So we have the TypeScript config here. Um, and this is basically going to tell um, TypeScript when it runs its compiler what not to include and what to include, and what type of output file you want. So you're going to look for an ES5 or a regular JavaScript file output, and it's going to exclude the node directories because those node modules directories should already have been compiled um, if there's any TypeScript in them already. So you shouldn't have to compile them, and so we're explicitly excluding them here. Okay. The last thing we want to include here um, from the setup is the system config. So we have system config, and this is there's a couple lines here that are important. Um, the one down here is going to tell it where what our app is. So we're going to explicitly load our app from our index file. It's going to go to this line, and it's going to then look for a main.js application file. Okay. Up here, you're giving it the various directories that your application requires. So here we have some node module directories. We have an app directory that's going to be created for the app. Okay. So that's the setup. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an application, a basic app, how that's set up. Here's the index.html. Okay, in index.html, we're linking in a bootstrap file for some styles, then um, some other required JavaScript libraries. Here is our module loader, system.source. And then we have down here, we're actually taking the system config file that was created, the one that pointed to the app, and we're loading it. And then after that, we can do the import stage, which is the booting of the application. So we're going to import app, which points to the main.ts in our system config file. And it's going to run that and make sure there aren't any errors. That's going to get us started. So once we're started, Angular is going to be able to know what to do with this. This is the app tag. We're defining one app tag in this application, and it's going to be replaced here. So Angular is going to look at this and say, okay, I know that there's an app with this name, and I'm going to replace this. So that app is going to live in the app directory. So let's create a new folder called app. And we'll go into there and we'll copy in two files, which are part of our application. One is the main.ts file, and one is the app component. Okay, the main.ts file is going to import all of these items from Angular, so it knows that about the Angular framework, and then it's going to import the actual app itself. And the app is going to be in this .app component file. Here's the app component file, and for that we'll see that we have this part here. This is the component annotation, which is where we tell it what the name of the selector is. That's what shows up in the index.html file. Then we give it a template and say wherever it sees that app in the index file, we want it to replace it with this and do some processing. So it's going to go through here, include this HTML. Then when it gets down here, we're going to use an ng4, which is a looping construct. It's going to loop through all the data that we have down here in the class. Okay. Now to get this working, we need to convert this to JavaScript because right now it's TypeScript and browsers won't load that. So what we need to do here is we need to do Typescript Compiler -w from within that directory. It's going to go and it's going to compile any TypeScript files it finds, and you see that those were added over here. We have a main.javascript and an app.javascript which were compiled from the corresponding TypeScript files. And the last thing we need to do is to run a server, and server was installed as part of the node packages. So we're going to run it. Serve is the name of it. And at that point, we're going to be able to take a look at it, this application here. So let's minimize a couple of these windows. Actually, let's bring back the server window and load this application here, localhost 3000. And you see that the server's active, it's serving files, and then here's our application. Okay, so that's it for the setup and running of a basic application. In a future installments, we'll take a closer look at the application, how it's running, and then add some things to the application. Let's just go and close this out. So here's our wrap up. Today we did the setup and development environment. We ran that basic app. And the next steps in future installments are going to be to review that basic app, move HTML and CSS into templates, add a service that pulls data from the network source, and add some data handling so you can add and delete, update, and filter data. Thanks for listening.